Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. Before we begin today's webinar, Osteoporosis Canada acknowledges the land that our offices, located in Toronto, are on, is the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis. We also acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credit. My name is Tracy Napoli, Director of Fund Development and Marcom at Osteoporosis Canada, and I will be your moderator for today's webinar, Making a Will 101. During the webinar, you can enter questions by clicking the Q&A icon at the bottom of your screen, and we will do our best to answer as many questions as we can during the webinar in the time allowed. This presentation will provide general information about wills and estates. It will not provide legal advice. Depending on your situation, you may have to also consult a tax specialist or legal advisor. As one option to support causes that matter to you, charities like Osteoporosis Canada receive planned gifts which are left in wills from supporters. Often, we receive questions on how to leave a planned gift, in addition to other questions surrounding wills and estates. Osteoporosis Canada has partnered with Willful, an online estate planning platform, to provide information and an online tool to help individuals get their affairs in order. As part of the partnership, Willful is providing a promotional discount to those interested in using their online platform, which is then donated to Osteoporosis Canada. More information can be found at osteoporosis.ca/wills, and the promo code is OSTEO20. The information will be shared again at the end of the webinar and is also available on the Osteoporosis Canada website. We are also recording this webinar, so don't worry, we will be posting it on the OC Replay webpage so that you can view it again. It's now my pleasure to welcome Julia Staffen, Chief Operating Officer at Willful, an online estate planning platform that makes it easy for individuals to prepare for and deal with death in a digital age. Julia is responsible for organizing Willful to execute on their mission of ensuring every Canadian adult has a legal will. Julia directly oversees the operations of the company, including product, business development, HR, and finance, and her experience and leadership are focused on delivering transformative digital estate planning solutions and driving revenue growth through product, technology, and partnerships. Please welcome Julia.
Hi, thank you, Tracy. It's a pleasure to be here. So welcome everybody to the webinar today, and thank you again to Tracy for having me today. As Tracy mentioned, I'm Julia Staffen. I'm the COO at Willful and interim CEO, as our wonderful CEO, Erin Burry, just had a beautiful baby girl last week, and she is now on mat leave. As Tracy mentioned, I just want to mention before we get started that I am not an estate lawyer. So I will be providing lots of great, useful legal information today, but I won't be able to give legal advice. Now, I know what you're thinking. What an exciting topic. Most people think that estate planning is boring. In some cases it can be, but at Willful, we do our best to make it as engaging as possible. And so that will be my goal here with you today. But before I get started, it's important to go back to the beginning and really understand why we at Willful are so passionate about estate planning. Our co-founders, Erin and Kevin, who are pictured here, they started Willful a few years ago after they lost a family member tragically and unexpectedly. And when he passed, they realized how important pre-planning is for the family members. They were navigating unanswered questions and arguing over funeral choices, and they just thought there has to be a better way for recording wishes before you pass. And they started doing a bunch of research. And what they found is that the traditional methods of end-of-life planning and estate planning were very outdated. So they set out to make estate planning more accessible through technology and a user-friendly interface. And the stats that they found were quite shocking. The fact of the matter is that over half of Canadian adults do not have a will. And for those that do, 10% of them are out of date. And as you'll learn today, as we go through this presentation, that's a huge problem because in fact, 100% of us as adult Canadians absolutely need a will. But it's not just the average Canadian that needs a will either. Some of the biggest celebrities, including Aretha Franklin, Chadwick Boseman, Prince, and Amy Winehouse, they too passed away without a will. Now, it doesn't really make sense. They had, lots of wealth, lots of assets that they needed to distribute, and they had the means to afford a will. So it really does beg the question, why didn't they, and why do most people have a will? Well, it comes down to the dreaded but I don't have time. It's at the bottom of my to-do list, but I don't want to see a lawyer, but it costs too much, but I don't know where to start. And hey, do I even need a will? Wouldn't my family get everything anyway? But I'll be dead, so why do I care if I have a will? And the biggest but of all that we hear about, I don't want to think about death. That's depressing. At the end of the day, there's no excuse not to have a will. Today, we'll walk through how getting a will is actually a lot simpler than you think it might be, and how it's truly one of the best gifts that you can give your family. At Willful, we're reducing the barriers around creating a will. Those barriers include cost, convenience, and complexity. And our goal is to have making a will be as easy as ordering an Uber, booking an Airbnb, or ordering dinner via delivery. Our platform makes it easy and affordable to create a legal online will in less than 20 minutes. Today, I'll tell you a little bit more about the Willful platform, and then we'll go into the general estate planning process. But what I want to stress is at the end of this presentation and at the end of the day, if you take just one thing away, it's that you need a will regardless of how you create it. So how does it work? Well, we'll just leave it there. Think of Willful kind of like TurboTax for estate planning. So our legal content is drafted by local estate lawyers in each province on the back end. You go through a simple question and answer format to share more about your life situation and about your choices for executor, beneficiaries, and guardians for your children and your pets. We pull all of these answers into a set of customized PDF documents with clear instructions page that outlines how to execute all of your documents. Our plans are very affordable. They start at $99 and they all include free updates for life. So anytime you have a life change that occurs, you're able to go in and update your will free of charge. And as Tracy mentioned, you can use code OSTEO20 for $20 off of any of our plans. And we'll share that code again at the end, so you don't have to write it down now. We also offer a fully bilingual offering in Quebec, and we're the only online will platform to offer a fully end-to-end digital notarial will. And notarial wills in Quebec are basically the gold standard of wills. We've been delighting customers for years. We have a 4.9 star rating on Google, a net promoter score of 80, and we've created tens of thousands of documents to help create peace of mind for Canadians. So that's Willful in a nutshell. If we have questions about Willful, we can get to some of those at the end. Now I will take us through basically the meat of making a will. So first, what the heck is a will? Well, it's a legal document that basically outlines who gets your stuff and who takes care of your dependents, if you have them, when you pass away. That's really it. I know it seems pretty overwhelming. Anytime someone mentions will, people get a little bit scared, but it really is as simple as it sounds. The most important part is having the information you need and being armed with the education so that you make the decisions that feel right for you. So why do you need a will? Well, in reality, your will isn't actually for you, it's for your family. It's a little bit like life insurance. When you purchase life insurance, you don't necessarily purchase it for you, you purchase it for your family to protect them after you pass. Basically, a will is a document that guides your family after you pass away. It reduces the likelihood of arguing amongst family members and scrambling for information, just like what happened to Aaron and Kevin's family. And it also expedites the process of closing up your life. And what that means is that the money that you left gets into the hands of your beneficiaries much more quickly. The reality is that if you don't have a will, the government has a provincial formula that decides who gets your assets and how they're passed down. And I'm sure most of us on this call, including me, don't want the government to make that decision. And the other thing to note is the government formula doesn't account for common law spouses. So if you're common law, but not technically married, that wouldn't be covered. And so it's really important in that case to ensure you have a will. And really, it also puts you in the driver's seat in terms of assigning key rules like your executor and your guardian, instead of the court appointing those rules for you. So you know what a will is, you know why you need it, but when do you need it? Well, you should get a will in most of the following situations. So anytime you purchase a large asset like a home or a car, if you have any money sitting in bank accounts, including savings and checking account, as well as your investment account, if you do have minor children or pets that you want to take care of, if you get married, separated, or divorced, if you have a business or own shares in a business, or if your minor children grow up and become of age, you may want to adjust your will as well. But most importantly, like I said at the beginning, if you're an adult and you don't want to burden your family, it's important that you have a will. Even if you don't have a lot to pass on, I know it can be a misconception. Well, I don't have a lot of assets or a lot of money to pass on to anyone. That's okay. Even if you don't have a lot, a will saves your family time, money, and stress, and that is priceless at the end of the day. So we know what it is, why you need one, and when you need one. The question that most people ask is, do I have to go to a lawyer to get one? You can go to a lawyer if you'd like, but you don't have to. So what makes a will legal in Canada are the following. 1, it was written by you. 2, you have the mental capacity to understand the contents of the will. And 3, that it was signed on physical paper in front of 2 witnesses, and that those witnesses also sign the physical paper copy of your will. And voila, that's how it's done. Again, pretty simple when you break it down into some easy steps. Now, I'm going to go through the different methods for creating a will, but the way that you go about writing your will is really dependent on your budget, how much you want to spend on the process, the complexity of your situation, and honestly, most cases, your personal preference. So the first type of will that I will take you through is something called a holograph will. And this is a handwritten will. It's completely free other than the pen and the paper that you write it with. The thing about this will is that it has to be 100% in your handwriting. So today in Canada, a digital will, so typing a will up on your computer isn't legal. It has to be 100% handwritten, and it must be signed by you. This is the only type of will in Canada that doesn't require any witnesses. The challenge with this type of will is that most people aren't educated enough to know what to write down. So for example, if I created a holograph will, I might write, leave everything to my spouse. But what I may not write down is, who do I want to execute on my will, and what would happen if my spouse passed away and wasn't there to receive the contents of my will. These are the types of steps that Willful or a lawyer would guide you through. Now, holograph wills are legal across Canada with the exception of BC and PEI. And there are lots of famous stories or examples of holograph wills that have been held up in court. One example that comes to mind for me is a story of a man who wrote his will on a paper McDonald's napkin, and while he was devouring a Big Mac. I don't know the impetus for that. I don't know if he saw the calorie count or how much fat he was consuming, and his life flashed before his eyes and he had to get it written down. But the reality is it did hold up, and that is one way of creating a will. The second type of will that I'll talk about is a paper will kit. And basically this is a fill in the blank form. These are super affordable as well. Sometimes you can find a version online for free, or they cost about $30 to $40 at some place like Staples. Now, while affordable, they're pretty limiting. They're definitely a one-size-fits-all approach. At Willful, we call them the Mad Libs of estate planning because it's all, like I said, fill in the blank. And the other challenge with these is that if you do want to make an update, you have to go through and complete the entire form again, which is time consuming and maybe an impetus for not going and making those updates. Then there's online will platforms such as Willful or other ones out there as well. The cost is still affordable. As we mentioned, our plans start at $99 and they include free updates anytime, which means you don't incur costs in the future, which is a big benefit to lots of people. We're much more customized than a will kit, a paper will kit. So for example, if you have children and pets, you'll receive a different set of questions and a different set of documents than someone who doesn't have children or doesn't have pets. We also have built-in logic into the platform to ensure that you don't make some of the common errors that may invalidate the will. So for example, with Willful, you can't over share your estate or over distribute your estate to your beneficiaries. The limitation with online platforms is we can't provide legal advice, like I said at the beginning. And while they're much more customized than a paper will kit, we can't fully customize some of the elements you may choose to customize. And then the last and the most expensive way to get a will is through a lawyer. Or if you're in Quebec, like I said, you can have a notary as in BC. So in BC and Quebec, notaries do have the power to draft wills. A lawyer is expensive. Typical costs are about $500 to $1,000 upfront for the original drafting of the will. And then you incur hourly fees at the lawyer's rate anytime you want to make a change. So those can definitely add up. The benefit to lawyers is that they can provide legal advice and they offer the most customization of any of the options available. So that's it. Those are the different ways that you can create a will. And now that you know how to create a will, we'll talk through the 3 steps for completing your will. And what I would suggest here is these are the decisions that you want to make before you go sit down to create your will. So whether you're going online and doing it via a platform like Willful, or whether you're going to a lawyer or using a paper will kit, these decisions have to be made regardless. So these are the most important things that you want to think about. The first step is to choose who you'd like as your executor. Most people choose executors like bridesmaids or even a chocolate bar. They choose the person they like or the flavor that they like best. That is not what we would advise. The executor has a really big job, and you want to make sure that you choose someone who has the capacity and the time and the organizational skills to do a really good job. So what does an executor actually do? Well, they're basically in charge of executing your wishes as you wrote them in your will, and they handle your estate administration, which in layman's terms really means closing up your life. As part of that job, they'll compile an inventory of your assets and they'll close down your accounts. So they'll close any accounts such as bank accounts, Netflix, cable, etc. They'll pay off your debt and taxes. Unfortunately, those don't disappear when we die, which is too bad. And they will distribute all of your assets to your beneficiaries. The executor role is a lot of work. It's about 12 to 18 months to settle even a simple estate, and it usually requires hundreds of hours of work from that person. So you want to choose them really carefully. In terms of who you can choose, it can be a spouse, a family member, a friend, or you are able to hire a professional, such as through a bank or a trust company, to execute on your behalf. In terms of limitations for executors, if you are going to choose an executor who lives outside Canada, there are some major tax implications. So if that's something that is really important to you, I would suggest visiting a tax specialist to talk through your options. The other thing that I'll note is that it's important to ask them first. We often hear from customers who haven't informed their executor, and it's a big job, and you want to make sure that they're willing to take it on. In addition to that, you want to make sure that you assign some backup. So at the end of the day, if when you pass, your assigned executor is unable or unwilling to execute your will on your behalf, you want to make sure someone was assigned as a backup. Otherwise, the government and the court will decide for you. So now that you've got your executor assigned, it's time to choose your beneficiaries. Your beneficiaries are the individuals, or it could be an organization, that get your financial, property, and sentimental assets. I don't know if anyone in the webinar has seen the movie Knives Out. It's a parody on the difficulties that come from distributing an estate. And in this movie and in real life, who you choose as your beneficiaries can cause a lot of family drama. But ultimately, what's important to know is that it's 100% up to you as to who you want to distribute your assets to when you pass away. There's a good example of this. The Scholastic, and you may have heard about this, the Scholastic CEO recently passed, and instead of leaving his estate to his family, he left it to one of his employees. Now, it's important to remember that anyone can make a claim against your will if they believe that they deserve some of the assets out of it. But the thing is that they have to provide evidence to show that they should receive anything. The other important thing to note is that if you have a spouse or a child that is dependent on you, they are entitled to a share of the estate based on the Family Law Act. So I'll go into more about assigning beneficiaries and who can be beneficiaries, et cetera. But before we do, I just want to talk about what's not included in your will. So basically anything that is held jointly isn't included. So if you have joint bank accounts, joint investment accounts, jointly owned property, those are, say with your spouse or some other person, those are all considered outside of the will. That goes the same for registered saving accounts. So if you have RRSP or TFSA accounts, you've typically named a beneficiary when you set those accounts up. And the same goes for pensions and life insurance. Anything outside of those are considered your umbrella estate. Now, a lot of people think it's common practice to itemize all of the assets in your estate as part of your will. I just want to caution that actually that's not best practice and we wouldn't recommend it. And there's two reasons for that. First, when you pass away, your will actually becomes public, and then that asset list is available for everyone to see. And I don't think most of us want, the public domain knowing what we own. And then secondly, anytime you have to update your asset list, so you acquire a new piece of property, you buy a special piece of art, or you open a new bank account, you have to go and update that asset list. So it is best practice to document your assets, and that's very helpful for your executor. But if you do choose to do so, it's best to do it as a separate document outside of the will, not as part of the will itself. So who can be a beneficiary? So individuals are most common. So it could be, again, a spouse, a friend, a family member, a neighbor, and they can reside in Canada or anywhere around the world. And it's important to note that they can also be the same person as your executor or your guardian. So if you assign your brother Bill as your executor, he can also be a beneficiary. If you are assigning minors as beneficiaries, you can also choose at which age they will receive their inheritance. And the other type of beneficiary is an organization or a charity. Tactically, awarding some of your estate to a charity does help to reduce your final tax bill, which can be high. But, altruistically and more importantly, I think it's a really great way to leave a positive legacy behind when you pass away. Through Willful, we're very thrilled to be able to say that over 7,000 gifts have been left to charity through Willful Wills. But the reality is that only 12% of Canadians plan to leave a gift to charity in their will. And that's why we partner with osteoporosis. We really want to highlight the importance of legacy giving, and through our platform, make it really easy to donate to the charity of your choice. This is a great story about leaving a positive legacy when you pass. This wonderful woman from Peterborough left just over $700,000 in her will to the Humane Society. This is a great option if you don't have any children, if you have a large estate and can carve out a portion to a charity outside of your individual beneficiaries, or in some cases, you might have children that are fully grown and financially independent, and this offers up some flexibility in terms of, again, carving out of a portion for a charity or organization. You can also leave your assets to your dog. This is how this adorable German Shepherd became the richest dog in the world. I think at one point, Madonna may have bought a house from Gunther. I don't exactly know how that transaction went down, but he, I think, is still today the world's richest dog. This isn't something we advise, although it is possible. Dogs can only spend a certain amount of money and they don't have a lot to buy other than bones or houses, apparently, in Gunther's case. So there are 3 ways to leave a gift in your will. You can leave a specific gift, a cash gift, or a % of your residue. And I'll walk through each of those options for you. So a specific gift is an identifiable item that you want to give to someone specific. And this is also known as a bequest. Examples of these can be jewelry, could be a car, could be an heirloom. So say, a family recipe book that's been passed down through generations, or it could be shares in a company. The second type of gift is a cash gift, and this is typically a set amount of money or the contents of a bank or investment account. And this type of gift can either go to a person or to a charity. And then the last is what's called your residue. So everything that's left after your specific gifts in terms of cash and items have been distributed. And how you allocate your residue is by percentage. So for example, in this case, I could give 50% to my spouse, Joe, 25% to my child, Sarah, and 25% to Sick Kids, the charity of my choice. So it's important to also assign backup beneficiaries for the same reason that it was important to assign backup executors. What we want to make sure of is if someone in your will passes away either before you or at the same time as you, that we're not defaulting to the government formula. And again, putting them in the driver's seat and letting them make those decisions for you. The last step is to choose your guardians for your minor children or your pets. Willful's most common customer are new parents who have just had their first child, and it makes a ton of sense. You have this new little one that you want to protect. We hear a lot from customers that appointing your guardian is one of the most difficult decisions that you'll make in this process, but it's also one of the most important. Some things to note about guardians. So typically, guardians only come into effect if there is no surviving parent. So if you have a child with your spouse and you pass away, but your spouse doesn't, they assume guardianship. If you both pass away, then there's a guardian that would take over the care of that child. Typically, it's a family member or a close friend, and typically it's someone who shares the same values and parenting style as you. A guardian can live outside of Canada, but if you do choose to do that, we recommend add some reasoning to the will as to why, just because it's pretty disruptive to move a minor child to another country, for example. In terms of inheritance, if you do leave money to your child, that's held in trust and managed by your executor until the age that you specify in your will. There's no reason to leave additional money to guardians. They will access those funds via the executor. And one thing to note, we do not account for children with disabilities at Willful. So there's a specific type of trust called a Henton Trust that is specific to families or parents with children who have disabilities. And if that's the case, we do recommend visiting a lawyer. And lastly, we can't forget our furry friends. It's really important to assign a guardian of your pets as well. We hear a lot, pets who weren't named in the will, and unfortunately, that's one of the reasons that some pets end up in shelters. And along with assigning a guardian for your pet, you can also leave a little bit of money so that you ensure they are cared for. So that's it. 3 simple steps: executors, beneficiaries, and gifts. And you're at the finish line. And like I said, once you've made those decisions, it's actually really easy to go and get your will done. With Willful, that would take about 20 minutes to go through the process of drafting that document end to end. But you haven't taken the final and most important step yet, which is executing your will. So as I mentioned earlier, when we talked about the different ways to get a will, I mentioned that you have to sign a physical document or copy of your will. Unfortunately, in Canada, it's the law that your will has to be stored physically and signed on paper. We're trying to push that and are hoping there'll be some legislative changes soon, but for now, that is the case. So like I said, you have to print off your will. If you use Willful, you have to sign your document and have 2 witnesses sign as well. In terms of choosing your witnesses, you can't have your beneficiaries witness. So for example, if Brother Bill is a beneficiary in your will, he can't be your witness because that invalidates the will. And you may have heard about virtual witnessing. So with COVID-19 and the fact that it wasn't safe to do in-person visits, the government passed some laws around virtual witnessing, not in all provinces, but in some, that do allow you to do the witnessing via Zoom or another video platform. But it's important to note as well that the physical documents still have to be signed. In terms of storage, that's the next step. So once signed, you want to store it in a safe place. We hear people storing it in, desk drawers, filing cabinets, even the freezer, as well as, more formal ways to store it, such as the safety deposit box. The most important thing here is to tell your executor where it is. You don't want the case where executor can't access the will, because that just adds stress and complication to an already really difficult time. One option that is available is you can register the location of your will with the Canada Will Registry. It's basically a nationwide site that allows you to log on and write down the location of your will, so that if you do pass and the executor doesn't know where to find it, they can log on as well and find information as to where it is stored. It's $40 to register your will with the Canada Will Registry, but with every Willful plan, it's free. So you probably thought you were done, but there's one more step, and that is updating your will. We at Willful especially believe that a will is a living, breathing document, and that it should be changed whenever your life changes. So when should you update your will? As we talked about, you should definitely update your will if you're a couple and you have a child together, or single and you have a child, you would want to update your will. Or you may want to update it if you wrote your will when your children were minors and now they've grown up to become legal age, because the relevancy of guardians and things like that are no longer. You want to update your will if your marital status changes. So if you get married, separated, and divorced, or divorced, you want to update your will when you move to a new province. There are nuances in legislation across the country. So when you move, you do want to make sure that you update your will to reflect that change. If you want to add a new specific gifts, so the example I used, if you acquire, a new piece of art that you want to make sure goes to a specific person in your will, you may want to update that document then. And if you want to change any key rules or backups. So if you had an executor and say that person passed away, you would want to ensure that you updated your will to reflect your new choice. Now, how can you update your will? So if you wrote your will with a lawyer, you have to go back to that original lawyer in order for them to update it. You're not able to update an original will that was written by a lawyer online or via a new lawyer. So if you go back to that original lawyer, they can write something called a codicil, which is really an addendum that will update your will, or they can execute a completely new will that will revoke the previous version. If you do decide to go online, you can also update your will by just creating a new one. So if you have a will with a lawyer, but it's really outdated, you could go to Willful, for example, or another online platform and create a new one. And if you do, that will revoke the old one. And then once you've created your will with Willful, like we said, you're able to go in and update that at any time. Another important thing to note is when you do make an update, you must print and have your will signed and witnessed correctly, and then stored physically, like we talked about. So I know it probably sounds like a little bit of work to update. We typically recommend just reviewing your situation every 1 to 2 years and updating if you can. You don't want it to get so out of date that if you were to pass away unexpectedly, that your wishes wouldn't be respected. And just one last final word before we wrap. So there are some situations that are too complex for Willful or other online platforms. I talked about a couple of those in the presentation as we went through, but I'll just highlight a couple that may be relevant to this group. So one example is business owners. Often business owners will want dual wills for tax purposes. That's not something that we support. Complex trusts, we talked about Henson trusts. Another one of those is a spousal trust, which is common in a blended family situation. If you're looking for something like that, I would recommend seeing a lawyer. Multiple wills in different jurisdictions. So for example, if you own a property in the US, for example, your Ontario will or Canadian will wouldn't cover that. And so you'd have to have a different situation that would cover both cases. And then if you are looking for specific advice, either tax related or specific legal advice that is quite complicated. We typically say that Willful works for about 70 to 80% of the population. So that's it. Thank you so much for taking the time. I know it's a lot of information. Again, you can use code OSTEO20 for $20 off any will at willful.co. And if I didn't answer a question that you have, or if you want clarification on something or just want us to go over something one more time, that's okay too. We have a great support team. You can either email us at support@willful.co, or you can chat with us live, you can email us, or you can actually book a call with one of our team members and we can chat through the process and answer any questions that you might have. Thank you.
Thank you, Julia. That was a great presentation. So I know we have some questions. We have a bit of time. So we're going to try to go through a few questions. I'm just going to pull one up here. I'm going to go back to about if you have to update your if you have to update your will and you had a lawyer do it. So the question is, my original lawyer has closed. Do I need a new will?
So yes, the reality is, unfortunately, you do. So there, like I said, there's a couple of ways to do that. One is you could go visit a new lawyer and just get them to draft a new will for you, or you could use an online platform like Willful to do that as well. Okay, great.
Another question is power of attorney. Is that something you can touch on a little bit here?
Sure. Yeah. We actually used to have content on power of attorney in this presentation, but I would have talked to you for an hour and a half and you would have been bored. So yes, I can chat really quickly about power of attorney. So power of attorney is a document that protects you in the case that you become incapacitated. So you don't pass away, but you're unable to make decisions. You're not in sound mind in order to make decisions on your own. There are two types of power of attorney. There are power of attorney for real estate and power of attorney for healthcare. And those are two separate documents, although you can assign the same person to represent you if that's the case. At Willful, we offer a package that includes a will plus your power of attorney documents called our premium plan. And we always recommend that you do put those documents in place as well. Again, just don't know what's going to happen, and it's better to be prepared in the case of an emergency. And if you have any more questions about the specifics, just happy to answer those offline.
That's great. Thanks, Julia. We have another question. So if money is left for minor grandchildren, does a trust need to be set up, or can the money be given to the children's parents?
Yeah, so what happens is if you assign a grandchild as a beneficiary, what would happen is in the will, you would assign a specific age at which you want that child to receive the inheritance. So it doesn't have to be provided to the parents necessarily if you're willing to wait. If you do want to set up a trust, that is an option as well. That's not something that Willful can handle, but it's definitely an option.
Okay. Now, someone's asking, is 25 too young to do will? They don't have a house, they have no children. What do you say?
Yeah, great question. The answer is no. Like I said in the presentation, the reality is all adult Canadians should have a will. And again, it just really comes down to making sure that your family isn't guessing. So, some simple things like if you have a pet, you may want to assign the guardian of that pet. Or if you do have a special family heirloom, say you have, a old record collection or a piece of jewelry that you want to make sure goes to someone very special, then that's also a great reason to have a will. And yeah, the reality is it just saves your family stress and time at the end of the day. And so even if you feel like you don't have a lot of assets, it's still a really important document to have.
Great. Okay. This is great, everyone. We've got some really good questions here. This question is about picking an executor in a second marriage when both persons have children from the first marriage. How would you advise picking an executor?
Yeah, great question. So I can't give legal advice on this, but I can talk about the options. So one option is you can do what's called a joint will. That would be a will that is in both you and your spouse's name, and then you can set specific parameters around how you want to distribute your estate, including the spousal trust that I talked about. The other way to do it is that you can actually create separate wills and assign separate executors. So again, depends on your preferences and the complexity of your situation. You may want to consult a lawyer to see what would be best for you.
Okay. All right. So here's another one. What happens if one of the three surviving siblings and heir of the deceased who died intestate without a will cannot be located? Are you able to answer that?
I'm able to answer that at a very high level. So what happens is if they can't be found, the executor has to do everything that they possibly can to find that person. So there's a few ways you can go about it. You could post, something in a local paper. There's online sites that you can post on. There's also something called heir hunters. So you can go and try to hire someone to go and find this person. If you can't find the person and you've tried all the means that you possibly can, then you're able to go to the court and apply for, I don't know what the word is, but apply to basically say either this person is deceased or this person is not found, and then you can reallocate the money or the portion of the estate that person would get. So that's the process at the high level.
Okay. Is a will void if one of the witnesses is not known?
I'd have to clarify what not known means. The will is not void if a witness passes away. So if that happens, your will is still valid. In terms of not known, I'm not exactly sure what that means, but if we want to clarify, I'd be happy to answer.
Okay. Let's see here. Yes, this will be available online after. Someone's just asking. So yes, it will be available on OC Replay. Is Willful a Canadian company?
Great question. Yes, we are. Our head offices are located in Toronto, but we have employees across the country. I was actually just telling Tracy that earlier in the call. We operate in 8 of the 10 provinces, and we only operate in Canada, actually.
Okay. If someone is remarried, how do they ensure their kids get their share of the estate after the second partner passes?
Great question. Again, that's a bit of a specific legal advice question, but at a high level, I can say the spousal trust would be a good solution for that particular question, and you would want to speak to a lawyer about that.
Okay, great. All right. Does the free storage option through Willful actually store the will or just the location of the will?
Another great question. So it's not legal in Canada to store a will online. That's why we have to store it in the desk drawer, the freezer, or the safety deposit box. So the Canada Will Registry, which we don't operate, we're partnered up with an independent third party on that. They just store the location of the will, not the physical document.
Okay. And do you have to include specific information like bank account info, the name of a financial advisor, et cetera, in a will?
So the answer is no, and actually we don't recommend it. And the reason for that is because your will does become public domain, and so that list then becomes public, and also it just becomes a bit of a maintenance nightmare to maintain that asset list. One best practice that we do recommend is storing an asset list that is separate from the will. So could be written down, could be typed up in a Word document. As long as it's not part of the will, it doesn't follow the same storage and signing parameters. And so you can keep kind of an extra document that lists your assets. And if you can keep that up to date, it's really helpful for your executor at the end of the day.
Okay. Now this question here, I think that they're confusing beneficiary with witness, because it says if executor cannot be a beneficiary, does it include adult children who are both beneficiary and executor?
Yes,
Right.
so I think there is some confusion. So an executor can also benefit from your will, so they can be your beneficiary. So a good example of that is, again, a brother or a sister. You might choose them to execute because you trust them, but you also want them to get a share of your will, and so they would also be a beneficiary. The witness is the one that can't be named in the will in any way. So you want to find someone who's a little bit more arm's length than the people that you're closest to who you want to receive your estate, and get them to witness your will.
Okay. And then I think the last question we have is, and I think you mentioned it, you can do power of attorney online.
Yes,
is that
absolutely.
an online option?
Yep. So we offer power of attorney documents in all provinces with the exception of Quebec and New Brunswick, and we'll probably be launching those soon. So yes, you can absolutely do those online, and it's the same process as doing a will. You just go through step by step.
Okay. And oh, actually, nope, somebody just popped up. 2 other quick questions.
That's great.
Can the witnesses be related? Can the witnesses be related to each other, each of the witnesses?
Yep. As long as they're not named in the will, kind of anything goes.
Okay. And then the last question is about the code that is provided. So right now we're in partnership, so there is no expiry. So it's not like you have to use it this week or next week.
Nope.
So you just need to continue looking on the website. And if you have any questions on that, you can contact Osteoporosis Canada, or you can contact Willful just to get further clarification on that. So this is great. Everyone's had such really good questions. We are just running out of time, so we are going to wrap things up. So I'm going to thank Julia. And outside of wills and estates, you can also visit the Osteoporosis Canada website for great resources for programs and support. You can stream podcasts, take the Know Your Risk quiz, and you can also watch past webinars on the OC Replay webpage, including this one. So this webinar will be available in approximately 48 hours. Also, all registrants will be receiving an email with that link. So you will also receive it. So just keep an eye out, give us a day or two, and you will receive that. Again, I'm just highlighting the code if people missed it at the beginning. You can also get more information on wills and estates at osteoporosis.ca/wills. And the promo code is osteo20. And just want to thank Julia again and Willful. Now, you can get more information directly to your inbox. Go to the homepage of our website, go to the top right-hand corner. You can click subscribe, so that way you get notices on information and webinars like this one, and register in time right before they're about to happen. You can also follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And I just want to thank everyone for attending. Thank you again, Julia and Willful, and everyone stay well, stay connected, and until next time, take care. Have a great one, everyone. Take care. Thank you.
Thank you.